CFP championship is in the books. We had the last look we're going to get at prospects before the draft. That's it, except for the Senior Bowl and the rest of the All-Stars. What do we see right now today on Locked On NFL Draft?
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And of course, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy. He is at Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter. You can also find him Rogue Analytics, Locked On Chiefs. They're giving out great content. Chiefs, right now, that it might be the scariest team in the NFL to me. They're kind of the boogeyman out there, and you get to cover them. You got the boogeyman at quarterback. He is that for sure. There was some guy that was he said that Mahomes is overrated. We can get to that another time. I am at Eric_Crocker on Twitter, and you can also find me on Locked On 49ers. We also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. All right. And PrizePicks is a daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. And if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. First time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Ryan, gosh, what were your thoughts when you were watching this massacre of a national championship game? Because I did not expect TCU to win. I saw the point spread. It was around 14. And I said, I think Georgia can cover that. But I did not think that I'd be watching the game and saying, gosh, it's 62-7 or whatever or what. Like, it was ridiculous. It was hard to watch. But we still have a job to do. We still have to watch prospects. And there were guys that did well. We'll get to those guys. But just your thoughts right now, and just, did you have a good time watching the national championship? Was something that we're supposed to, or was the national championship for you Ohio State, Georgia?
That's a good way to put it. We'll have to talk about that later too. Like, I will say this. I agree with you. Like, I didn't think that TCU could win. I was a little more iffy about whether it would be 14 because we've seen them go down before and come back and that kind of thing. But I felt like the first quarter was pretty competitive, and that's kind of how I felt it was going to go most of the game, and that Georgia would build up a 14, maybe a 21-point lead, and that'd be about that, right? But to have it just kind of all collapse all of a sudden, I was a bit surprised by that. And that tells me a couple of things. Turnovers are still a big deal. And the fact that you made it to the championship game without having like a string of them, and you go up against a Georgia team that can produce them, that can make them happen. Chris Smith, I think the play of the game was Chris Smith's punch out to get that ball loose and set the whole tumbleweed tumbling. You know what I mean? But I will say this: after about mid-second quarter, it turned from fun, let's watch football to okay, I'm going to go put the Skycast on and I'm going to start work on all these prospects.
Yeah, it was fun to kind of watch the prospects and who was standing out. And we have talked a lot about quarterbacks. We also talked a lot about Quentin Johnston. I want to start with Max Duggan and get your thoughts on him. But right away, you saw him miss certain throws, right? There was this deep out route that he needed to complete. And the ball just started to die on him towards the end. And I'm like, okay, you start to look at little things and these traits that you want to see and how they translate to the next level. And right away, I'm like, you can't have that ball die on you. There was another ball that he threw down the field. It was a big ball. It was an explosive play, but the receiver had to stop and turn around for the ball. So now I'm having these arm limitation concerns. And I think a lot of people, when they think about having a big explosive arm, they're thinking throw the ball far, like Josh Allen, throwing the ball 70 yards, But for me, it's whether it's that big ball down the field that the guy had to stop and turn around for, or that out route, which to me, I think is more of a consistent throw that you have to make at the next level. Being able to just drive throws without your guys having to dive to the ground because the ball is dying on them. That's something that right away I'm like, okay, that might be a concern. And then for a quarterback he's pretty athletic. Like he can move. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to mistake him for being Lamar Jackson. But outside of his touchdown run, it was kind of a issue at all for Georgia's defense to be able to stop him running. I mean, he's trying to move away. He couldn't get the ball out of his hands. His receivers getting locked up. I mean, there was a lot of things not going his way or his team's way, but I don't think he helped the matters at all, especially for a guy who was runner-up to win Heisman.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, and they've made their living getting to this point by when they're down, they let Max use his legs, or that he takes it on himself to use his legs, and that gets them through. Against this athletic defense, that just wasn't going to be the case. I don't even felt that he tried enough, to tell you the truth. So like there was some air of, oh man, this isn't going to work either. Now what do we do? I mean, let's be honest. I don't think the Big Joe came through. Maybe if they had the rim back as well, maybe they could spread it out a little bit more. They could slow things down a little bit more. But to use your athleticism from the quarterback spot and then just hit a brick wall where you're not getting anything done, I think that's what puts your team into a downfall. And honestly, I think it's going to affect what his evaluation is going to be, because Georgia's defense is good. It's not as good as last year's. It's not as good as any defense you're going to face in the NFL. So there is a comparison there.
We did talk about a certain matchup, Quentin Johnston, and what it was going to look like against a certain corner that people were saying is potentially a first round pick over there. And what did Quentin Johnston do in this game? I don't know if you looked at the stat, but first of all, just watching him, you could see right away, not a very impactful game for Quentin Johnston. But then when you start to look at the numbers and you see one catch for 3 yards, and we thought with him going up against Kelee Ringo, right, we're like, that matchup favors Ringo. Because this isn't this twitched up little guy that's going to get Ringo kind of getting upfield or change, turned around. Mm-hmm. He's going to be able to match his physicality. He's going to be able to run with him. And Johnston, just one catch, 3 yards, and that one catch was a screen. Now, there was one play where you could say the cornerback got there a little early, and there could have been pass interference. DB knocked the ball away. But ultimately, I mean, it was a theme all night with not just Johnston, but receivers just not really, truly being able to consistently create any type of separation from the Georgia defensive backs. But Quentin Johnston's a guy and we mocked him in the first round. I mean, not even just first round, top 10. We didn't see that. We didn't see that type of ability. Not from any of them. Darius Davis had the 60-yard play, but outside of that, man, slim pickings for the receivers for TCU.
Well, and that's the thing, is that's what separates. When you are supposed to be the number one wide receiver in this class, and you can't elevate your game when your quarterback needs it. Now, let's be honest. He had 29 dropbacks. He was pressured on 16 of them. So a lot of this lies on the offensive line. But you got to be able to do better things. You got to be able to, when you know that Ringo is a little bit more susceptible to change direction, you got to hit the slants. You got to come off the ball better. You got to make yourself available with that huge 6'4" body to help your quarterback out. And I didn't see enough of an attitude change from Johnston right then. And I felt like Ringo won this matchup all the way around. Did you see anything different?
I didn't see anything different. Ringo looked very much at home, and I'm like, man, if Ringo gets catapulted, and it's not going to be just one game that's going to change any of these guys' lives in the sense of where they're going to draft. But just if you are concerned about something with Johnston heading in, that could have confirmed it one way or the other, and vice versa for Ringo at the cornerback position. One more thing we want to touch on. Matter of fact, we'll get to that next, but we talked a lot about the bad in that game, a lot of bad from TCU and their prospects and what it looked like. Let's talk about some of the good things from the guys over there at Georgia. They did play on the field too, and they obviously was a blowout. All right, we're going to get to those guys and what it looked like next. But first, we want to talk to you a little bit about our guys over at PrizePicks. And PrizePicks is a daily fantasy where you pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go and score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. So I really like to do it I'll do all quarterbacks, all receivers, all running backs, and I'll pick kind of more or less on their projected stats. And I have a lot of success. And the thing I have a lot more success with is when I do 3 players. Right? You kind of want to get greedy and do 5 players, but 3 players, that's where it's at. That's the sweet spot right there. And, if you think Derrick Henry's going to run for a touchdown, boom, put more, right? If it's set at 0.05. If you think that Dak Prescott, who has thrown the most interceptions in the league and missed 5 games, if you think come playoff time he's going to throw an interception, hit that button for more on Dak Prescott. All right? PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you can watch. This includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, all the sports, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, so it's super easy, doesn't take a lot of time, and they have nice, safe withdrawals, the fast withdrawals, all right, so you get your money right away, and currently operating in over 30 states, and that's including our neighbors up north, Canada. All right, so download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. Your first-time users, if you are that, you can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 using the promo code Locked On. So what does that mean? If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will match it, and you'll have $200 to play with. If you deposit $50, then they'll match that and give you $50. You'll have $100. All right. So make sure you go to PrizePicks.com and use promo code Locked On. All right, guys. Also, we know what time of the year it is. It is tax time, and there's no better place to get your tax done at TurboTax. And now the great thing about TurboTax, they make it so you don't have to do it, all right? Isn't that great to be able to do your taxes and you actually don't do anything? You leave it up to the people that are the experts, all right? And with TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right. And it's 100% guaranteed. So you can just sit back and relax. It feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax. Full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. And that's a lot better than when I used to try to do my own taxes at TurboTax, man. Go to the expert, all right? We also want to thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen every day. And now you can subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get a daily conversation on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday and Monday. Local insiders cover the weekends with game-to-game episodes. That's Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Ryan, there's a guy by the name of Stetson Bennett. He actually has this kind of cool nickname that I looked up. All right, but Stetson Bennett, amazing story. I'm pretty sure everyone has heard it by now. It's a guy that walked on, didn't have any scholarship offers, and I'm always confused with, you have no offers, but you go and walk on at Georgia, right? But maybe you just wanted to be at Georgia. I don't know. But went to Georgia, didn't earn a scholarship. Okay, went the junior college route, did great there, came back to Georgia on scholarship. Awesome. And then he played 4 years of football. So I don't know how many years this guy has. He played 4 years at Georgia. And we know there's the COVID year in there. So he played 4 years at Georgia. You played a year at junior college. And you had a redshirt year. I mean, this guy has been in college a long time.
Super.
Right. And a super senior. And within that time, he finishes with 2 straight national championships, defying all odds. And I think he's going to have to defy some odds heading to the NFL because he's not big. He looks about 5'11", 5'10", 182 pounds. He's not this big guy, but there's been just something about the way that he has fought back and how he plays and the swagger and the confidence. And he's making throws. I have to go back and evaluate him and just watch his all 22 and see what throws can't he make. But he's throwing the ball downfield, albeit guys are open. They did a really good job of getting Brock Bowers. Can't wait to talk about him next year. But they got him the ball in space. He did a terrific job. But, man, I feel like every time I watch Stetson Bennett, I come away more and more impressed with just his ability to run an offense efficiently, do well, make plays with his legs when needed, they ran quarterback power for him one play, and he ran it for a touchdown. So just because some of your thoughts on him in this game and really kind of what this process might look like for him, because he's not a guy that we talk about in the top 5 of quarterbacks.
No, he's definitely not. And there was a time we oscillated this whole season. Was he draftable was the first question we started asking. And then B was like, should he be in the top 5? I think the truth is he falls somewhere in between. I think what's going to happen in the evaluation process for teams is going to be, okay, we see what he can do. I think his ability to scramble is going to be a big plus for him. But they're going to say 8 or 9 of the guys that he plays with on offense for Georgia had the advantage in their matchup. And so how does he do when he's playing for Carolina or Houston or somebody who is already at the bottom of the barrel in the NFL and is already losing those battles up and down the line at wide receiver, at tight end. The back can't get loose. Like, what does he do to lift somebody that maybe isn't the more talented guy on his position on that offense? That's going to be the question for me. And I still think he's got a draftable grade. I don't think he's pushing into the top 5 anytime soon, but I will say this. I think he probably came up nearly as much as Max Duggan fell from this one performance, if you're going to hold that against him.
I have people telling me Max Duggan is not even a quarterback at the next level. They're
Yeah.
saying he's a receiver or he's a tight end, something offensively, but not a quarterback. And if the arm strength is a concern for others, like it is for me, then I could potentially see why they might think that way. You got a big tight end, Washington, over there at Georgia. I feel like he doesn't get a lot of the targets because you see Brock Bowers, and Bowers, 7 catches, 152 yards. He's explosive, run after catch guy. He does all those things. But Washington, in that game, didn't really see a whole lot from him. 1 catch for 28 yards. But how do you feel about the big tight end as a prospect? Because, again, he's a guy, 6'7", 270 pounds, but only 28 receptions on the season. Yeah. And this is, again, in an offense that historically doesn't throw the ball a ton. So I'm not surprised that there's not this high volume of numbers, but do you think that he's, as fluid of an athlete as he needs to be? Do you think he blocks as well as he needs to block? What's it going to look? Is he going to be kind of like a clone of Mo Alley Cox, who was drafted last year?
I can't see that. He does have athletic ability. Certainly he has the leaps. He has the size. I don't necessarily think he has the change of direction to get loose well. He's going to have to be, in my opinion, a body type shield catcher kind of thing. But he's more than that. He's got the arm length too. And you're right, doesn't get a lot of targets. I will say this. Maybe my opinion will change because I have not worked on his film yet. And I will say this. I'm going to throw this film out because he was nearly a scratch from this ballgame due to the injury in the semi. So I don't think this is representative of what he can be as much. So just remember, folks, when you're watching, I would take his particular performance out of the equation for this evaluation cycle. I like him. I just don't think he's a guy that can shake coverage loose. He's got to be the bigger player, the stronger player, I think, at the catch point next level.
Yeah, I think offensively you did see some of the usual guys just doing their thing. McConkey, man, I can't wait to watch him next year. He's a sophomore right now, but he's had some explosive plays, and I think his play, obviously not like super, I guess it was pretty consistent with him being a deep threat in games. So he did his thing as well. You had who caught the touchdown? Was it Mitchell? I think it was. Mitchell caught the touchdown. Nice jump ball. Touchdown, just muscled away. And I was like, okay, now it's starting to get away from TCU. We have not mentioned Tomlinson for TCU. I thought he actually, out of all the guys, right, Travarius Hodges Tomlinson, I thought he played well. He showed up. He was like, you know what? Guys are getting dogged all around me. Guys are getting jump balls thrown on them. Head top, as the kids say now, and they kind of pat their head or say you're too small. But he was a guy who said, I'm going to be scrappy. And he's one of the smallest guys on the field. But I thought he did a really good job. And I, got to mention some of the guys on Georgia's defensive line, of course. I mean, they were terrors throughout this entire game, just getting after it. And I said, man. And once I saw TCU just trying to do everything sideways right now, quick, get the ball at their hands, I'm like, okay, this game, it's done. This is them saying, we have no way to protect our quarterback back there, and this is just it's gonna continue to get out of hand. So it did, and we saw that 65-7 TCU falls to Georgia. All right, when we come back, I'm out here. If you can tell, I'm not at home. If you're watching on YouTube, see I'm in the hotel room right now. They got some funny little wallpaper there. I am in Orlando, Florida, and watching some guys over at the Hula Bowl. All right, so we're going to talk about a few guys. And I thought, you know what? This guy does well, and we might need to watch a little bit more film on him. We're going to talk about those guys more and next. But first, we want to talk to you about BetOnline and how BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. All right, get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball, World Cup when it was here. I mean, they've got everything right there at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, which I'm sure you do, that's why you listen to us right now, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. They got podcasts there, guys. And they're always looking for the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information to you. And we know betting kind of drives sports right now. So what are you going to do? You're going to head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about BetOnline, where the game starts. So I'm here at the Hula Bowl, and I'm actually watching one of the players I train. I train Jeremy Lucien, cornerback out of Vanderbilt, and I'm really excited for this kid. I watched him go from UConn, not really being on the field his freshman year, and he gets on the field, he does his thing. Ultimately, he does so well where it's like, UConn, are they serious about football right now? So he ends up transferring, and this is the tough part I think a lot of people don't truly understand about some of these guys, even in the transfer portal. He has a serious major, right? And I say serious because some guys, they get there. They go to school just to go to the NFL. But he's actually someone who has amazing grades. He's super smart. He's like some kind of mechanical or robotic engineer or something like that. So when he was in the transfer portal, LSU, Cal Berkeley, and a couple other schools wanted him to be mid-year transfers, and they were going to give him a scholarship. Well, he couldn't leave until the season ended. Ultimately, he ended up going to Vanderbilt, and that was a step up for him, and it was more so about just getting that film against top competition. So now he's in the SEC. He's playing against the Georgias and, those type of schools. That was awesome for him, but he ends up going to a college all-star game. Amazing. So I get to watch him at the Hula Bowl, and while I'm watching him, and he did well, but I'm noticing some of these other guys. All right, so let's kind of rattle off some of these guys that I got the opportunity to see, and some guys that we might need to write down and take a look at. All right, first, let's start off on the offensive side of the ball. There was a guy by the name of, he was wearing number 19, Aitukowa Matiko, wide receiver out of Kwansei Gakuen. All right, I'm pretty sure I butchered that. But a little guy, and they have some kind of imports, guys from overseas. And he was a guy who got pressed up a little bit, a few times. But he was competing, small little Asian guy, and he's doing his thing, and he was scrappy, and he caught everything thrown at him. Even if he didn't get a clean release, he was catching the ball. He wasn't going to beat anybody vertically with speed. But underneath, he was tough as nails, and I really love seeing that about him. So that was one guy. Another receiver who I thought stood out, and maybe because he's playing receiver with number 20 on, but his name is Jared Wayne, wide receiver out of Pittsburgh. And this was a bigger body guy. They don't have his height, weight on here, but if I had to guess, Jared Wayne was probably listed at 6'4", 220 pounds. Wouldn't be surprised, but he was a fluid athlete. He made the contested catches. He looked fluid underneath and was able to separate from guys and catch the ball there. I'm standing next to NFL scouts. I hear some guys say, hey, man, that Pitt kid, he's having a good day, right? And I'm like, man, I'm thinking in my head, I was thinking the same thing. So he was turning heads. I thought there was one throw, and this is just kind of how I watch these guys and evaluate them, but he ran a corner route. I'm like, if he was just a tad bit faster, just one more step, he would get to that. And those are the differences you'll see with some of the guys that are drafted higher as opposed to later. But that was a good-looking kid. A couple more guys. There was a tight end out of Georgia Tech, E.J. Jenkins. If you told me he's 6'6", I would not be surprised. Caught one pass, but man, that was the only time I saw him get targeted during team drills. But big body guy, looked fluid. Just huge tight end. Maybe it was just the angle and I was right there right next to the field, but he looked huge. And then let's get to some of the defensive guys. Obviously, my guy is a cornerback, so I'm watching him. And I'm watching all the guys that I feel like he's potentially competing with to get eyes from these scouts. And I'll tell you who stood out. So first we have Art Green, cornerback out of Houston. Thought he looked good. Challenging guys vertically down the field, knocking balls away, played with a certain level of swagger. I loved it. Duke's Darius Joyner. He looks solid as a safety, looks the part with his body. A guy who is kind of yapping the entire time, number 9, David or DeVard Wilson. I might have butchered his name, but safety out of UCF. So he felt his home, and maybe that's what it was. He felt at home. He's at UCF. The practices, everything's going on at UCF. He's a UCF player, but I loved his trash talking, telling the quarterback from Kansas State, hey, man, why'd you throw that over here? Don't do that. He's yelling at them. That was awesome. And then another guy who really, a couple of guys. One, corner from LSU, Jarek Bernard-Converse. And I'm familiar with Bernard-Converse because I remember him playing in the Alabama game. He broke up a corner route. Then he broke up a play in the end zone. And those were plays that they needed to really kind of win that game. He was awesome today. Is sticky at the line of scrimmage, played well from off coverage, driving routes, knocking balls away. I thought he looked really good today. So I thought he had a strong showing. And the last guy, and I know I'm going on a ramble here, but the last guy I wanted to mention, his name will kind of sound familiar, Stephen Gilmore, brother of Stephon Gilmore. He was explosive out of his breaks. He was scrappy. He challenged guys vertically. The one thing that's just going to probably, it's going to be hard for certain guys when you just watch him. He is so tiny. He's so skinny. If you could think of, and if you guys are familiar with Travis Benjamin, right? It looked like Travis Benjamin, but at corner. I mean, just skinny guy. Not big. He was the smallest defensive back there. Not 1 ounce of muscle on him.
You go put the Notre Dame film on, and he plays bigger than he is. That's
all
the
right,
one thing that I've seen from him so far.
Well, I thought he played big, and I know he had a pick 6 in that game, but I thought he played big today. So I kind of rattled off just some of the guys because I know I'm out here in Orlando. You're not here, but those are some of the guys where I was like, man, they look good. They look good. So it was kind of fun just kind of checking that out and rubbing shoulders with a lot of the NFL scouts here.
Yeah, and then you get to see guys that we're not going to see. I'm not going to see him. I'm not going to be at the Hula Bowl. So good for you. It gives us eyes on the field, Mr. Eric Crocker. We appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, man. That's going to be it for this show, man. We definitely want to thank y'all for making us your first listen of the day. All right, and for your second listen, go check out Locked On NFL Podcast, bring you the local insights you love on the national spotlight and daily conversations of the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. But you guys can check us out. Again, find us on Twitter at Eric_Crocker, at Ryan Tracy NFL, Locked On Chiefs, Locked On 49ers. We will see y'all tomorrow when we finish up the second part of our mock draft. Until then, we are out. Peace.